Hello, everybody. Hi, Victor. Victor, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry, I was trying to get off of it. Hello, everybody. I just wanted to welcome you to another episode of the Fantastic Real Estate Series, episode number 13. Raf, you are just killing it every time, adding tremendous value. And if you guys don't know, I'm Victor Horcasitas. I'm with Metropolitan, and we love to add value to the community by giving you information that is important to know. And how could it be more important than if you're trying to buy an expensive piece of property, your dream home? And we have an expert with us, Raf Jacobs from Inspired Property Experts, just continuously having fantastic feedback. And Raf, let's get into the subject of mistakes to avoid when buying a property in Spain. If you want, let people know about when you want them to ask questions, because you always have a very active Q&A session.
Yep. Thanks for the introduction, Victor. And again, welcome everybody. For those who come a bit later, there's a recording. If you need to leave earlier, the recording will be sent to you afterwards. A few practical things, questions, we keep them at the end of the session. You have a Q&A button somewhere at the bottom or top of your screen within the Zoom application. Just send your questions there to the group, not to me privately, because I might not see all questions then. Just in the group chat, we'll monitor them and answer your questions towards the end of the session. Okay. For those of you who do not know me, I'm a long-term Barcelona resident, 20 years here now. Created Inspire Property Experts years ago to help people avoid mistakes in the Spanish property jungle. And I also do teach at the Barcelona University. Actually, some of the content we talk about today is content that is covered in the real estate master program at university. You get it for free here today. I'm also the City Council of Barcelona. For those of you who are from Barcelona, also has appointed me as kind of the go-to expert for property matters for the international community. Good. So enough about that. What are we going to talk about today? I'm going to turn off the screen sharing for a second. So you all see me? You hear me well? Yes. Okay, excellent. So buying a property in Spain, buying a property in Spain, that's easy. Buying the best possible property, buying your dream property at the lowest possible price, without surprises, without mistakes, buying something with good long-term value and without going through a stressful process, that is complex. That is complex, and that's normal. That's also, buying a property is also complex in your home country. It's not just because you're in Spain. Because for most people, when you buy a house or an apartment, it is the #1 most important financial decision in your life, or at least at that stage of your life. It's connected often to a plan, to a dream. We see people that come to Spain, for instance, they relocate for work. Their company asks them to lead a new project in Barcelona. They move with their family, so there's a plan. Or we see people that are freelancers, or they run their own business, maybe an online business. They live in gray and rainy London, and they say, like, why do I work from here? I could do actually this work from Spain. So that's a clear plan, but also a lot of dreams involved. People who dream of maybe retiring here, spending more time here, and more people, and certainly after what happened because of COVID, we see people who historically might come for a few days. They come now for a few weeks or a few months here, and they work from here. So when you have these plans and these dreams, there's a lot of things involved. There's emotion involved. There's financial decisions involved. There's different opinions involved from your family members potentially. There's trade-offs to be made, what location and what type of property, etc., etc. And that makes it complex. At the same time, in Spain, and then now it becomes specific to Spain, the market is not regulated in Spain. It's very poorly regulated. It's a jungle. And as a buyer, it's very easy to make mistakes here. But I see there's more people joining. Very easy to make mistakes. We're going to talk about these mistakes today. What I'm not going to do is just show you a list of 10 mistakes to avoid and tell you how you can avoid them. I'm going to make it very pragmatic. We are working in with international buyers every single day. Lots of different cases, different scenarios across different parts of Spain. Headquarters are in Barcelona, but we operate from Costa Brava to the very south of Spain. So people who buy apartments, houses, investment products, etc. Very important for me to make it more relevant to you. We're going to launch a poll on the screen. 2 polls. The first one is just tell me a little bit more who you are, and we will launch the poll now. It's about if you want to buy, if you're thinking of buying rather a place to live yourself, maybe a second residence, or rather a pure investment. That's one option. And also which areas of Spain you have in mind, because the risks in the market and the mistakes that people make, they depend on these questions, or the answer to these questions, and this helps me to pick better examples as well. Can we launch the poll? It should pop up on your screen now. No. Is the poll coming? Okay, should be coming. It's just helpful for me to know a little bit who we have on the call, because sometimes you have people who rather want to change from renting to owning a property, or people who want maybe to invest money. So something is going wrong with the poll, I think. It might come later. So when it pops up, is it there? Oh, I don't see this. So hold on. You should have a message. I'm looking at the poll results here in parallel. Oh, there's another poll actually launched. So the question here is, if you buy a property in Spain, you typically find a property online. You get to a website of a realtor. So who is the client of that realtor, that real estate agency? Is it you as the buyer? Is it, you think it's rather the seller? Or is it both of you, buyer and seller? Because you might think the agency is, for instance, intermediating, and therefore it's both of you. So, and then, yeah, the question continues. And so what I see here is, first question, I'm not going to answer yet because some people can still answer. Second question, what type of property? The majority of you is looking for a place to live yourself. That's good. It's helpful for me. 70% are looking for a place to live. But I will bring examples of investment and second residences. And we see a lot of people interested in the Barcelona or the Barcelona area. Okay, so yeah, I think we can close the poll now. So very interesting. The question: who is the customer of a real estate agency? A lot of people have answered, it's the buyer. It's me as the buyer. And that's a bit of an unfortunate answer. You're not. In Spain, the market works very different. They say Spain is different. It's very applicable to the real estate market. Agencies in Spain, and there is a lot of them. At every corner you find 1 or 2 real estate agencies. They work for the seller, for the owner. They are contracted by the owner of the property, who gives them a sales mandate and asks them to please help them sell their house or their apartments. They're paid by the seller. Seller is your counterparty in the whole process. So what does this mean? And this is the cause of a lot of mistakes. That's why we asked this question up front here in the webinar. The people who have answered that either the buyer is the client or the buyer and the seller are the customer, then you start with a fundamentally wrong understanding of how the property market works in Spain and who is working for you, who is taking care of your interests, who wants the best for you. So to be very clear, in Spain, anyone can sell property. The market is not regulated. Every one of you who is on the call today and who lives in Spain, you can open an agency, a realtor agency tomorrow. It's very, very simple. But agents also don't have liability or very poor liability, meaning that if there's a problem with a property, if there is financial charges or debt related to the apartment or the house, if there's a disagreement between different owners, or it's a divorce or an inheritance and it's not yet sorted, they don't have to tell you. If there is technical challenges or problems with the apartment or maybe with the building or the municipality where you want to buy, there is urban plans that might affect your property, etc. Sellers don't have to inform you as a buyer. This is very, very hard to believe as an international buyer because it's not how it works in many other countries. It is the way it works in Spain. In addition to that, you say, yeah, but there's a notary public. In Spain, the role of the notary public is very, very limited. The notary is not involved in the due diligence of your property. It's not involved, in other words, in checking out that everything is okay before you commit to buy. And when you commit to buy, that's not at the notary when you sign your purchase. You commit to buy when you start to commit to buy when you sign a reservation contract, make an offer, when you sign earnest money agreements or arras contracts in Spanish. That is way earlier. You also pay 10% at these stages. Then you're committed. You can't pull back easily. Notary is not involved there. So very easy to make mistakes, a lot of risks. That is why we created Inspire Property Experts years ago to help international buyers avoid these problems. Okay, I'll explain at the end of the session what we do, how we could help you, but it's basically about making sure you have a good plan to start with. When you buy a property, that we believe in the property, that it's not about what the seller says about it, it's about what we think about it, our professional opinion, making sure you don't overpay, the price is good, and giving guarantees. In this non-regulated sector, how can we give you guarantees on paper that before you sign something, before you make payments to the owner, that these things are, that everything is clear. So that is, that's in a nutshell the context of the market. So what is it, the property jungle? But let's make this more specific now. Why is the market such a jungle? We said, yeah, there's no regulations, no entry barriers, but examples. In many countries, let's take the US, many clients from the US. In the US, when you want to buy a property, it's common to run a technical inspection on that property by an independent surveyor. Okay, so usual. So and if there is problems then identified by that inspection, you have options to get out of a contract if you signed a contract already. So that is protection for buyers. In Spain, that's not the case. It doesn't exist in Spain, that way of working. You need to put, so technical inspections are not a standard part of buyers. Most buyers don't do that. Although, if most of you said you look in the Barcelona area, in Barcelona center, a lot of the buildings, they are 100 years old or 20 years old, but they are not new. The same for houses in the surroundings of Barcelona. It's not common to have these inspections. So you need to put yourself the right legal mechanisms in place to get protection. To get protection in case of technical problems pop up after or at a later stage, because you cannot see future technical problems. You can anticipate them. You can do inspections and do samples, etc. But you cannot see everything. So you need to create legal mechanisms to give you protection. Having technical problems with a property is a very common mistake, unfortunately. And some of these mistakes can be foreseen, anticipated, but also if you have the right legal protection in your contracts, agreements between you and the seller, then you also are protected for future things that might pop up, technically speaking, problems, defects, surprises at a later stage. But if you don't have that protection built in an early stage, it's too late. So the point is, it's not like by default someone will run such an inspection. No, you have got to take care of that yourself. Also, the notary will never ask about how was the technical inspection. No, doesn't exist. So what do we do? That's why we have architects in the team. And on every single purchase for every single customer, we have an independent architect from our team going in, check the property, the house or the apartments, if it's an apartment, also the building, and document his or her findings about that. So that's information that you need to know before you commit to buy the property, before you make payments to the sellers. So technical part, it's not because you see a property and you think, oh, this looks okay. And I've done maybe a few renovations in the past in my home country or in Spain, or I've bought several properties, so this will be okay. It's not because it looks okay that it is okay. Example, Barcelona. A lot of people like these classic Art Nouveau buildings with beautiful high ceilings, wooden beams, etc. Nice mosaic floors, fantastic. But the structure of these buildings is often not that good anymore. Wooden beams over time, they start to bend. And you might not see it, but architects have a better eye for that. And they might see if there is potential problems with such a floor. Or if your neighbor knocked down a certain wall downstairs, so your floor might have some inclination. Signs for potentially big problems. People don't tend to check this. It's one example, but it's very, very important. So the second point is, I'll wrap up at the end of the session as well with a summary of all the potential mistakes and how to avoid them. Second point is, how do you know if the price of a property is a fair price, is a good price? If you're from Canada or from Singapore, it's very easy. There's a database, there's transparency, and you can exactly see for how much a property has been bought, when it was being bought for that amount of money, and therefore you have a very good understanding of if what you're paying or if what they're asking is a fair price. So you avoid overpaying. And again, overpaying, and that is specifically true for international buyers, is very, very common. The transparency doesn't exist. There's no single database to pull data from, certainly not for a specific property. So how do you know if they ask 540,000 euro for an apartment? How do you know if that is a great price, or if that should rather be 520 or maybe 500, or if you say actually it's under the market value, so maybe I should buy this right away. So it's very, very difficult. Even you say, yeah, but I do my benchmarks on Idealista or Fotocasa, the big listing sites. True, but those sites publish asking prices, not deal prices. And every seller has his own strategy to determine the asking price. Some people go very sharp, put like very market competitive prices because they want to sell quickly, so lead time to sell is shorter. Other people, specifically when they are when they have an agent who says they will be helping them, agents overpromise to their customers, to the sellers, to get sales mandates. If they think it's worth 500, they'll tell us the owner, we sell this for 540. Another agent tell them, you should sell this for 550 or 560 to get a sales mandate, because many owners fall into this trap. What we do is when we recommend in terms of negotiation strategy, or what price point we should try to land the property at, is we have to pay, as Inspire, we have to pay databases, expensive databases that also the banks use when they value properties for a mortgage, for instance, to have access to more data. But it's not just data-based. The close feeling to the market is very important, because if you do the analysis yourself based on asking price data, for instance, for one property, that's one set of references, but we're in the market daily, so there's a lot of information about what do we see buyers and sellers agree to these days, and how does COVID affect this? How will the interest rates went up 1.5 weeks ago, and I think they'll still go up a little bit. How will that affect buyers' willingness to pay a certain price, maybe a bit more or a bit less, and sellers' willingness to maybe reduce prices or not? But that's one part of the dimension. There's data, there is feeling with the market, but it's also an understanding of, because every property is different, except if you buy a very standard investment property, where there's many of them. You need to understand the implications, the cost implications of wow factors that a property has. For instance, a terrace, a view, a swimming pool, a very quiet garden, a very quiet street. How is that valued? An elevator in all buildings in Barcelona, right? A property with an elevator in Borne is easily 30,000 euros more expensive than one without an elevator in the same area or in the same street. As an example, the same applies to terraces or views and so on. But also understanding implications of potential issues. What if the building needs significant maintenance in the next 5 years, for instance? Or what if there are certain issues, maybe legal issues, or there is some debt in the community of owners, in the comunidad, that needs to be covered? How does it affect the asking price or the deal price already? Or just works required as renovations to make a house or a property become better? If you lack that information, it doesn't matter how good the data points are that you get. You will miss data and make wrong decisions. So here it's about trying to get this wider view on the full cost implications and the market, and therefore the fair price, to know what is the best price, at what price should I try to buy, and secondly, when do I need to be prepared to walk away from a property? A lot of our customers, in the end they say, yeah, I think you were right, this was probably not good value, but they realize that after the facts, not before the facts. And I think you saw this video initially, Johan from Belgium, he said, yeah, you stopped us from buying 7 properties, and that's because we didn't believe in them. There were like country houses in the south of Spain. That's a mistake to avoid, and mistake is basically overpaying. The first mistake was technical problems. In this case, we talk about having a limited or restricted view on the market, on prices, on costs, and therefore overpaying. The second or another element related to this is when an agency in Spain sees an international buyer, they see money, they see euros. They think, okay, this is going to be an easy sale. Those people have a higher income than many locals, so the price might go up automatically. We've seen this. We've seen this with agencies where we have access when we see listing sites as a company. We see how prices change, but also when they go up. And sometimes you see we can see the history. You see that the price dropped by minus 10,000 euro. What is that? It means it went up by 10,000 euros, and that happened exactly the day that the client contacted, etc. So it's complicated. Final point regarding the price. A mistake we see a lot, and it makes people miss opportunities, is if in your mind you think you need to negotiate on every property to get a good deal, you will miss opportunities. That's not true. You don't need to negotiate on every deal. You need to negotiate when the asking price is above where it should be. But we have a significant amount of transactions where we advise to buy at the asking price. It's also true that international buyers like yourself, you probably don't want the average property, you want something a little bit better, and therefore you play within a specific segment, of course, of apartments or houses. But again, sometimes we feel that if you don't go for the asking price, or something symbolically lower than the asking price, a few thousand euros off, the property will be sold very quickly to another buyer. So that's things to take into account. So we talked about technical problems, overpaying, and then the third point related to the fact that the market is not regulated is the people that you will meet in a search/purchase transaction. Those people, they will not hand you a safety belt. They will not give you all the facts about the property. 90+% of all the purchases we do, and we do many per month, the information that we need is not available. We need to request it again. We need to get it through other channels. When I say they don't give you a safety belt, what does it mean? They won't protect you. because the agency works for the seller. The notary is not involved in due diligence, so it's not safety. But the legislation is relatively poor in terms of giving protection to buyers. It becomes stronger once you commit and pay 10%. But the point is, you should make sure that everything is okay before you pay the 10%. Because otherwise you get massive problems, and you're gone for 2 years to in a legal fight with the previous owner. When you don't have all the facts and there's no safety belt, it leads to uninformed decisions instead of informed decisions, and that leads them to mistakes, to bad contracts, to signing documents you should not sign, to making payments you should not make, to overpaying, etc. Examples. We saw a great property for Irla. Irla was a buyer from Ireland. He bought recently in Barcelona. Fantastic property. Everything looked great. Even the architect said, like, yeah, looks very nice. Quality is good. The building seems to be great. Technically, few negative points, but nothing major. But then when we looked with the lawyer at a lot of additional information about the ownership and the building, etc., and how the different owners operate as a community of owners, we saw major problems. There was it was between two neighbors. There was a legal fight going on with lawyers between one neighbor and another neighbor, but also between all the neighbors and the company who did the renovation of the entire building, because they weren't happy with the quality. It's like, wait, do we really want to buy into this type of building? Is this what we want? So that it's problems, it's cost, it's sleepless nights. So that's things where you can say, okay, we need to take a step back, forget about this property. But it's not the seller who will tell you. The seller just say, it's a great property, the price has just been reduced a little bit, there's other people coming again tomorrow for a second visit, and they come with their parents, and etc. So all emotional arguments, very simple, but every time the same arguments that the sellers use. That makes it difficult for you. We had a case where the house had a piece of land around it, and there was a very small road, which was a public road, but not used anymore. So what happens with that? And it's only by having the architect speak with the people from the urban planning at the city hall that we can understand what the implications are. And if it's okay, can you put a fence around it, yes or no? Or can actually widen that road in the future? So is there going to be problems for maybe noise and more traffic, etc.? Another typical example that you should look for if you like, and I know a lot of you will like this, if you want to buy penthouses with a terrace, atticos with a terrace, in Sitges, in Barcelona, in doesn't matter where in Spain, who owns that terrace? This morning we were one of the clients, she's in love with a certain attico. We asked the question, who owns the terrace? So therefore, is it private? Is it fully private? And the seller says, yes, don't worry, it's private terrace. But we don't see that in the documents. It's not registered as a private terrace in a land registry. There's nothing about it in the cadastre. There's nothing about it in the previous purchase deed. So it's like, okay, but why do you say this is private? No, the neighbors agreed in a meeting that this is private. Okay, so you see, it starts to become very gray, and it's nothing is formally registered. And it's not because the neighbors in the meeting say, or even they put in a document that the terrace is private, that automatically means that you have private rights on that terrace. Who's responsible for the maintenance of such a terrace? If these things are not clear, you will have problems later. So that's topics to check carefully later. From these examples, I think you start to see what can go wrong, what topics you need to watch out for. And these are things that are very, very common. Because I could give like 100 examples of potential mistakes, but these are in a lot of transactions happening. You should check all these things when you decide to buy something, when you decide to make an offer for a property in your due diligence process. But where is the difference between doubts you might have about the property, or concerns, or maybe risks you see, and on the other side, real problems? Well, that difference that is created once you put your signature on a piece of paper, on an offer, on a reservation contract, on an ARAS contract, the owner's money agreement, not yet at the notary. The problem is created, the risk becomes a problem, the doubt becomes a problem, early stage in Spain. Okay, and charges that are related, if the seller has debt on a property, for instance, or seller has debt, in many countries, this debt is linked to the seller. He sells the property, and the tax authorities or administration, they will claim the debts with the previous owner. It's not like that in Spain. The debt goes with the property. So you buy the property, you put your signature. If he or she, previous owner, had a debt, the authorities will come to you and claim the debt, meaning you've paid for the full property, you may be paying a mortgage, and you have to pay off debt from the previous owner. And just Google it. There's a lot of cases like that in Spain. Be very careful. How did it happen? Signing the wrong documents, signing too quickly, probably. Okay. We had a case. You can spot some of these problems, hopefully before you get to the stage of buying the property, and then the damage can be controlled, which is example I will give you now. But you can perfectly have the full damage. Example of the full damage: the transactions because of inheritances have increased more than 20% since the beginning of COVID in Spain, average of Spain. Inheritances means that suddenly the kids or the grandchildren have to sell a property. They have to pay property tax on that. If they don't pay the property tax, and I don't say that they didn't pay because they don't want to pay it, but they often don't know how to do that. And they maybe don't know that they need to pay it until an official letter comes. But if the property is sold in the meanwhile, the letter will come to you, and you cannot say I don't pay. You pay first, and then you can start a legal fight with the authorities. That's not what you want to do. And then your dream or your plan becomes a nightmare. Another example: a client from Texas, Rachel. She saw a property. It was an apartment outside the center. It was south from Valencia, actually. So she saw an apartment. She was in the US. She had looked at many apartments online. She did some visits months ago, and then the agent told her, "You got to put a 5,000 euro deposit down. Then we take it off the market." And then she did that. They got on the next possible flight. They went from Texas to Amsterdam to Alicante, went to see the property, and the property was not as it was advertised. It was a totally different. So the pictures were photoshopped, or they were at least not realistic pictures. But she paid the money, and the document she signed with that was not okay. It was not a good document, and she lost the 5,000 euros. Then after that, she came to us, and she found us. Yet, like, what can we do now? But that's things you can't recover that. You can. Sometimes you can, but it's very, very difficult. If you signed the wrong documents, it's too late. So be cautious of that. These are examples of mistakes. They're hard to revert. The money is often lost. So why do they happen? And I think there is, in my experience, there's two reasons why such mistakes can happen. It's one, either you did not know enough, or you did not do enough. You did not go far enough in what you had to do. And I'll give you examples. When I say you did not know enough, maybe you didn't know enough about the prices, the market, or about renovation costs, or you didn't know enough about the purchase process, what steps come when you do what, or you had gaps in your knowledge about how does a good contract looks like in Spain, or you didn't know that the agent doesn't work for you, that he defends the interest of your counterparty. That's examples of not knowing enough, which can lead to mistakes. When I say if you knew everything, then if there's a mistake, it's probably because you didn't do enough. You stopped too early, maybe, or there was no good preparation up front before looking at properties. You didn't go deep enough with your checks. Maybe you assumed that at some point things would be okay, while there's other things that could have been checked and could have been could have been indicators for problems. And a lot of people say, no, but I do. You can't say I didn't do enough. I do a lot. Actually, I do everything myself. I'm spend a lot of time on it. That's fine, but we see even people when you've done it multiple times. There's so many situations, and we say this often in the office here. Every week we learn things. Every case is different, and there's learnings continuously, and it just is accumulated knowledge and experience that makes us better every day, and that, so be mindful of these things. If you have wrong assumptions or wrong knowledge or lack of knowledge, or let's say wrong assumptions from start, and I repeat, I don't have the percentage here, but we had a large percentage of people who thought that you as a buyer are the customer of a realtor. So if you have wrong assumptions, that will lead you to take wrong conclusions, and wrong conclusions might lead to mistakes. So that is where it doesn't start. The risk doesn't start when you see a property and when you look at a contract. No, the risk starts very, very early on, when you start thinking about a property. So there's three things in my mind that are important to do, that you need to do as preparation before seriously looking at properties, before spending time on visiting and touring apartments or houses. The three things are: one, get a complete understanding of how you will pay for the property, your financials, your own money. Where are the funds? Are you on a bank account? You need to sell some stock. How long do you think it will take? You need to free up investment accounts, but also if you plan to take a mortgage, which banks are you going to approach, or did you approach? How much can you finance? People say, no, in Spain you can finance 80% of the purchase price. Not true. It's true for some people. We're signing a deal next week, financing percentage 92% loan to value, so nearly everything is financed. But if you say, no, I want to have a small investment property, and depending on your income and your work situation, maybe the bank say you need to put down 40% as down payment. So be mindful of these financials. Very, very important preparation. Secondly, be realistic about what you want, and it's not because you have a dream that dream exists. It's not because you say, I want this type of property at that location for this budget, that the market is offering it. And we see so many people who come to us and they say, we've been searching for 6 months or for a year. We've done loads of visits and we don't find it. Something is wrong there. Something went wrong. That's alignment, realistic expectations up front. And the third point is, so we said financials, good expectations in terms of what can you buy where for what budgets, which meets your lifestyle or your plans. The third point is understanding the purchase process very well, the process steps and dependencies between these steps and the financial process as well on your side when you need to make payments and so on. If that is there, then you're way better prepared to start this journey. There is webinars from us. You can watch them for free on mortgages in Spain, on the buying process, and where it often goes wrong and how it doesn't work in Spain. There's workshops on webinars on renovating properties, etc. Lots of different things. So it's there for you for free. Feel free to use it, but you will be a better informed buyer, and better informed buyers take better decisions. So you see, there's a lot of expertise or knowledge involved, skills involved, and that's why we created Inspire years ago. But it's also why I believe a lot in expertise as an opposite to generalism or generalists. People say, no, but I take a lawyer because I read somewhere that you need a lawyer in Spain, and then I can't make mistakes. I don't agree. You need a lawyer? Yes, absolutely yes. Don't buy without a lawyer. It's like driving the car without a seatbelt on. Nothing might happen, but if something happens, it's major. You need the lawyers, but that's not enough, because the skills, in my opinion, that you need is you need to have someone who's great at finding the best properties, sourcing them. You can do that yourself. We can do that for you. It depends. But knowing the market, knowing the areas, knowing the agencies, getting maybe off-market properties. Secondly, how good are you at negotiating? How good a deal maker are you? So we got other person in the team, they only do deal making, negotiations. Very, very, very good at that. You need a lawyer, we said it before, but the lawyer is not going to do the technical inspection on the property. That's why we send in an architect to do that part. Okay. Then you'll have admin stuff to manage, like how do you get an NIE number, open a bank account, maybe put a power of attorney in place, and things that are or can be quite important or critical to the purchase process. Maybe you need things about renovation. So that's why I say we've created that team as experts and not generalists. I don't believe so a lawyer alone can't help you. The lawyer is not an expert in the property market. The lawyer doesn't care how the street is after midnight. The lawyer doesn't care if the layout of your house or apartment is good. Doesn't care about renovation works in the future. He only cares about the contract that you sign, and that also the lawyer is protected. So it's key, critical, but certainly not enough, right? Certainly not enough. Actually, many agencies in Spain will recommend lawyers. Another mistake: if you see a property to an agency and they tell you, you need a lawyer, we have 3 lawyers, we can put you in touch, you can choose one. Don't do that. It's a lawyer recommended by your counterparty. And so many people say, no, we do that. And then they say, no, but the lawyer only charges me 1,200 euros or 2,000 euros. Of course, they get money from the agency. So be careful, because you're not protected if you do these kind of things. Good. I think in Spain, or people recommend you friends of them. No, I got a friend and he's a lawyer. In Spain, and this is after 20 years, I think I can say this. I think a lot of local people confuse friendship with professionalism, and they recommend their friends, but that's not necessarily the best professional. So just be mindful of that. Advice: so make sure you either master the skills I've mentioned, and you can read about it, webinars about it, whatever you want, but master these skills, or do what you need to do and hire someone to give you these guarantees throughout the process to make sure that no mistakes can happen. And be cautious there. There's a lot of people. The real estate sector goes up and down, and cyclical always. There's a lot of very, very high rotation of personnel in this sector. So people who say, no, we help you buy property, look at what they've done in their previous life. If they were just selling properties, which is 80% of those people that suddenly start to help buyers, they don't have this qualification. And that's why I think we can't have it all in one person. Okay. So we talked about different mistakes already. There's a few more. I'm going to go a little bit quicker to the next ones because they are, I think, easier to understand. And then we open up for questions and answers. Missing opportunities. Big mistake. We see people who keep doubting. They don't take decisions. They're too late. They overanalyze, and they can't separate the important things from secondary factors. What do I mean by that? Good properties sell quickly in Spain, so you need to separate these things. For instance, people, it's normal. You become emotional about a purchase. You start dreaming of that new kitchen that you want to build, or how you would do the garden, etc. It's fine. But if the potential is there to change the kitchen, and we have a rough cost estimate, that's fine. We can move ahead one step, conditionally secure the property, and move ahead step by step. If you don't do that and you want all the details about the new kitchen, probably another buyer will come along and you might lose the property. So it's better to find balance there. So that mistakes you can expect here, or just always thinking that you will find something better. That's why we could have a good feeling for when something is really great or when it's just something you should walk away from. Another point is people often don't have a good view on the renovation cost that is required to make a property their dream property. Agencies, when they show you a property and it needs renovation, tell, yeah, we have a proposal already from 1 or 2 building companies. These proposals, I can tell you, put my hand in the fire, they will be under estimates of the real costs. They make a low estimate. If they know the renovation is going to be 70,000 euro, I bet you get a 50K proposal because they want to sell the property. They don't have to give you all information. They don't have to tell you the truth. They want to sell the property. That's when they get their money from the seller. So be careful of that. the cost of renovation, but also see the potential and what is possible or maybe not possible, right? What constraints might be. Even more important if you go for new developments or off-plan properties, the technical part becomes and the costs become a lot more important. Opportunities are missed as well often because the financial part in the preparation has not been is not clear enough. So you don't know exactly how you will finance it and which banks will finance it. I don't recommend you to sign purchase agreements if you don't know exactly how much money you can get as a mortgage and from which bank. If you get pre-approvals, if you don't have it, you run into major risks. Okay. 2 more points. The one is location. We see a lot of buyers, they're very restrictive, and I think often too restrictive on location. Example, in Barcelona, for those of you who are from Barcelona, you have the French, the Lycée Français, the French school. People say, we want to live nearby, 15 minutes walk. Okay, but the properties in that area have certain dimensions, have higher prices, but you can, then we have workshops and we talk about, but you know, if you go a little bit further, maybe you don't walk, but it's a great bus connection and it's a 9-minute bus ride. Would that be okay to you? And often people didn't think that way because they had this predefined ideas in their mind. The same when it comes to investment apartments, the location becomes even more important. So long-term value, the social demographics around certain areas, what type of tenants you get, how are streets at night, and so on. So don't be too restrictive on that, and know these locations. And the last point is it's normally you're emotional. There is irrationality involved in a purchase. We take all the emotion out and just look at what do we think about the property, the price, etc. But at start, be realistic about, does it exist what I want? Because if you need to search for 6 months and you don't find it, something might be wrong. Let's sit together. Let's have a conversation and see if there's other things that you might have to adjust. And it's typically adjusting either location or property features. Do I really want this, or can I go a bit lower on the scale of property features, or budget? But budget is for many people difficult to adjust. So I'm going to look at the Q&A now. I could talk for hours about this topic. I will share here. Hold on. You see my screen again? Yeah. So this is a recap of the topics we discussed. I'm not going to go through that again, but if you want to take notes, or you can do so. I'm going to go to the questions, and no, that's not for now. Where is the chat? There we go. I'll start top to bottom. Okay. Carrie is a question here. At what point should we have the architect inspect the property, detached house in Malaga? Before we do the reserva, can it be done that fast? So ideal world, before a reservation, before making an offer. That might not work practically speaking from a timing point of view, or from there's maybe just more work to be done. So in such cases, that's where you need to build mechanisms into place that if you detect problems with the property afterwards, that you have an exit option in your agreements, in your reservation, for instance. Okay. Andre, any tips on how to find the right renovation deal? Often the offers can vary a lot in price for the same job on paper. How do you avoid overpaying or getting an inferior job done? Good question, and a lot of things go wrong with the renovation, which is after the purchase, of course. I recommend you have a look at the renovations webinar. think it's episode 4, or so we'll send you the link later. But the short answer is renovation projects. Key ingredient is proper planning, knowing exactly what is the scope of work that you want to the builders to work on, and secondly, getting good quote, but making sure that the builders don't leave elements out of that scope on purpose. Typical element they leave out. Nice apartment, needs renovation. We want to restore, clean the old mosaic floor. Great. They don't mention that you might have to re-level that floor. Sometimes you might have taken really a lot of tiles off, put a layer of cement underneath or other layers, put the tiles on again. It's very expensive, but they don't tell you. And then they say, no, we didn't know that. We just thought we would just be cleaning them. Well, a good architect can see these things. We, with our customers, we are involved when we ask renovation proposals, so that we check if we think they are complete, as coherent as possible. If they vary a lot in price, they might have not understood the same job. They might have a different scope in mind. So get a good breakdown as well. For all of you, if you got other questions, my email address is on there. Just send it to us, and I will set up I'll send you a link where you can see my agenda. We can book a 20-30 minute Zoom meeting. I don't charge for that initial session if you're interested. You tell me your plans, I give you my opinion, and then we can take it from there. Any relevant mistakes to avoid or to mitigate regarding business plans for investors or rental apartments? Example, ROI, vacant flats, bad tenants, etc. I think a very important mistake for investors, and certainly for repeat investors, so people who've bought one property, they rent it out, it goes well, they buy a second property, is that they forget to think about the market and the market trends. What is the property market doing? It's going upward, downward, and they buy again, and they assume that the same thing will happen. And this happened, for instance, a lot in 2017, when prices stopped to go up. Demand went down a bit on the property market, and suddenly people had paid like 2016 or 2017 prices for properties, assuming that the market would continue to go up at 3, 4, 5, 6% per year, and the market stopped going up, right? Flattened. Your business case is gone, but you have paid the property already, and you've paid expensive renovation, and then you can't find buyers for your property. So visibility on what you think the market will be doing, that's where we advise as well on our buyers. That's very important. There's a lot of other things like which location, long-term value, the type of tenant you want, long-term rentals versus tourist rentals, Airbnb style, or monthly rentals. It's all different models, different implications, different type of tenants, different types of rental incomes, from high to low, different types of legal obligations. So we got to be careful there as well.
Thanks, Raf. Appreciate it.
It's a short answer, but I'm happy to follow up and talk about a specific case if you want to. What are the main considerations, risks when buying plots for construction? These things change over time. There's a financial part, obviously, because when you buy a plot for construction, the bank will typically not finance that, so you got to pay that yourself. And then you need to develop the project on paper. You need to start selling on paper properties on a piece of land where you still might not have a license to build on it. So you just sell things on paper, and only when you've sold on paper 40 to 50%, the bank will say, okay, now you're going to be successful, now we finance. And then you get the money, well, not the money yet, you get an agreement for the mortgage. You can start talking to the local authorities to get a building license, a permit, etc. So that is, there's a risk to buy the land and then maybe not getting such licenses, but also you need to sell them afterwards. It's difficult. Another risk related to this, look at look at supply in the markets. In some parts of Spain, there is considerable oversupply of finished apartments. Developers don't seem to learn much from it. They're again starting to build heavily. Certainly towards the south of Spain, we see big projects with 40, 60, 80, 120 units in one complex. They did that in 2017, 16, 17, 18 as well. I think I predicted 2020 they would start to drop prices. We saw price drops there as well because they couldn't find the buyers. It was oversupply on the market, stock on the market. So the trend is difficult. It's important there, but also third point, the cost of building will go up probably, is going up already because of the lack of supply chain problems, increased prices of raw materials you need for construction projects. So it's a difficult business case, or it's a risky business case. I need to make sure you have sufficient funding and financing at a low rate to extend your business case by a year or 2 years if you don't get sufficient buyers. Interested in getting 90% of or more financing, what are the cons? The cons are that obviously you pay a higher monthly payback to the bank. You need to have these funds available, you need to work within your available income. Some banks will charge you a higher interest rate to get to that level of financing, which is a high level of financing, but not necessarily, because you can also get to higher levels of financing, 90 or 100% or 110%, if you have another property that you can leverage, for instance, another apartment where you have paid back part of the mortgage already. They can increase the mortgage there, they can mortgage on a new apartment, and you put zero cash in. So these things can work as well. So not necessarily many cons, beside on the cost side of it. One point to this, and because it's not a mistake, but the banks in Spain, this winds me up. They try to confuse, to give wrong information, or to confuse their potential customers for a mortgage by saying that with them you might get to 90% mortgage, and they know it's probably not possible, because they only do that if the official valuation of the property is like 10% or so above the deal price. That's crazy. You would have, it can happen, but it's very, very unlikely. But the bank, they try to tie you to them, and then they say, no, in the end we can't do it, so we can do 80%, and then you don't have time anymore to go to other banks, to source other banks, because you have committed timings in your contracts. So that's often a problem. Well, I hear that there are mortgage brokers here. Are they good? Are they a good path for mortgages versus directly via banks? We typically introduce our customers to, for instance, a few banks and a broker. There is brokers that charge you a fee upfront as a buyer. There's brokers that don't do that. They only charge if you actually take the mortgage through them. Depends on your situation. We have cases where I quickly see, when I look at your profile, I would say, well, this looks like fairly straightforward to me, and maybe you should talk to Santander and Evobank and Sabadell, for instance, as an example. Or in other cases, we think like, well, this is going to be difficult because your income is in a different currency. So I know these and these banks, they won't finance you, and you might have to go that. And so brokers are sometimes better, not always better. And I know it's not a yes or no answer, but it depends on your situation, Gilad. If you drop me a message, an email with your, and then I can ask you a few questions to understand your situation better. What exactly your agency offers? Do I need to find property myself, or can you help me find it? So I will, am I still sharing my screen? Yes. So I will show you something. So in a nutshell, what we do is, it's most of what we do. This is like a day in the life of Inspire Property Experts. It's about good planning up front, like we talked about that, mortgages, that. We can search for the property, not everywhere in Spain, but it depends, certainly if it's Barcelona and so on. So we can also then access off-market properties through our network, properties that are not listed. We do pre-visits if you're not here. Because today, for instance, we have customers from New York here. They arrived yesterday with a big jet lag. We prepared we looked at like 30 properties more or less that we thought are interesting. We're going to visit 14 or so, I believe, with them this week. And so that's all been prepared. So they just come, and at the end of the week, they can take a buy decision. We help with appraisals, which you need for the mortgage. We do the Anna is our killer negotiator. So she actually runs industry trainings for that. She's recognized for that. Make sure you don't overpay. You get renovation cost estimates for us. I didn't mention this, but Inspire started many years ago as a company buying properties to renovate them and then either sell them or rent them out. That's extremely valuable experience for us to advise, not only in the whole purchase process, but also in the investment process for investors or on properties that need a renovation, because we don't advise based on general ideas, averages. No, we've done that with our own money. We've had sleepless nights. We know what is important when it comes to renovations. We have lawyers, of course, we have architects. I think that was clear already. We can help you with your bank account in Spain, NIE numbers, powers of attorney, so things that are golden visas, and renovations. Okay, so let me move ahead. And by the way, our customer is the buyer, so we are paid as well by the buyer, of course. How has the pandemic affected the market? Positively for buyers. The pandemic, there's another webinar on it's good to ask a question, another webinar on the impact of COVID on the market. And specifically, I wrote an article a few months ago, it's on our blog, it's on Metropolitan as well, where I share my predictions, what I think is going to happen. So the market, bottom line, the market dropped, less buyers, less confidence in the economy, prices dropped, specifically in the center of Barcelona, for instance. We saw easily 10% price drops. Rental prices sometimes dropped equally, sometimes less. So that's interesting for investors. If the asking price, purchase price drops, rental price doesn't drop that much. I should buy in that area, maybe better returns. Outside on the coasts, we have seen way bigger price drops as well. Exceptions are properties with atticos with a terrace, penthouses with a terrace. They're very high in demand because of COVID. People want outside space, they pay for that. Bottom line is, I think now we have all ingredients for a new boom of property transactions in Spain. We start to see that the lead times of selling properties is shortening. Negotiation potential is in many cases being reduced. International buyers are coming back in kind of all over Europe. Travel restrictions have been lifted, so people can travel again. But importantly as well, people have the dream to buy a property in Spain has not gone because of the pandemic, and the dream is stronger now. They really want to make it come true this year. They have saved additional money, so that is, we are at the tipping point in the market, and I'm very cautious when I say these things because I know they go online, but I think we've reached the bottom of the prices, and now it's going to be a little bit more flat, maybe depending on COVID, and then an upwards trend. Okay, more good. Many questions. I like that. Where are we? What effect do you see inflation? What effect do you see inflation have on property prices in Barcelona and Madrid? When there's inflation, it's generally property is a safe haven for your money. When you finance the property and you take a mortgage, you'll be even better off because you don't lose the money on the inflation. So we see already people, also local families, non-international families, saying like, well, we should buy now because interest rates are still very low. Let's leverage the bank, put a multiplier on our savings, put the money into property, and so that's good for demand. So if you want to buy, you will have more buyers, more demand on the same markets. We went to see a house on Idealista. The agent offered to show us other houses that were listed by other agencies. Would she still be paid by seller, or would or would we be expected to pay her commission? I don't know which part of Spain you talk about, Carrie, because the market works different, and the way agencies work is different across many parts of Spain. So in Valencia, you pay an agent by default, kind of, when you buy a property. In some parts of Spain, you do as well. Some agencies in Barcelona also ask you to pay them. If they offer you property listed by other agents, they might have a deal in place between themselves and the other agents, so where they might share some fees. My recommendation would be to push. If they ask for it, you said push back, and you say, no, that is your business. You work for the seller. You should get your money from the seller. Okay. Gary, it can be more complex, of course, because you don't know, and sometimes agencies don't want to share commissions between them, and sometimes as a buyer you can take on some of that cost in exchange for a discount on the property. So there is many ways, but drop me an email if you want to, and we can look at the specifics here. I have heard that a recent change in the rental law, a cap, yes, there is a cap on rental prices in Barcelona center, has made it more attractive in some cases to sell an apartment rather than rent it out. True. Depends on where the apartment is, how big it is, what the rental limit is on that apartment, and depends as well on what type of rental contract you have in place. This cap is in place for long-term rental contracts, 5 years rental contracts if you own the property as an individual, 7 years if it's a business. So it's not necessarily a problem. Sometimes you can also increase your rental price if your property meets for certain conditions. So there's a cap plus a certain amount then. This is a big problem for the market, in so much as the whole idea, it's a political game. It's a populist game where politicians promise to people that the rental prices will drop, so they cap it, and that's it. Prices will drop, and then everybody will get cheap rental property. So the reality is, and all economists warned for this, and there's not many places in the world where rental limits work. The reality is that the supply drops. Supply of rental properties drops, and therefore you get, if you have the demand and a supply curve, you get suddenly a wide gap between demand, people who want a property that is cheaper, and people actually offer such properties. So there's a promise like we make everybody happy. The reality is a lot of people will be discontent, will be unhappy because they won't find the properties. And we see this in Barcelona. There is plenty of examples where people don't find good rental properties as it was promised. So do people sell? Not necessarily. Depends on their investor profile, if they need the money or not. Personally, as Inspire, we keep investing in Barcelona City because we see good business cases. Many of our customers do as well, but it depends on, it's not everywhere. You need to be selective and make sure that the numbers work out. And again, the type of rental contract is impacting here as well. What are areas such as La Sagrera and El Clot good? I guess are these areas good to consider? I hear locals saying that this is not the case. Jerry, good to consider for what? Depends. If it's to live there, then you need to look at the social demographics. If you like the area, if you like the people who live there, etc. If it's as an investment, that's a totally different story. Then things change. Sagrera is an example where during COVID, the property purchase price dropped more than the rental price because it's a working class area. It's a lot of people who live there. They will probably rent for maybe the rest of their lives because they're relatively low incomes and they might not be able to build up the necessary savings to buy a property, or they might decide not to do so. So that's why rental demand stays high there, but prices dropped because people are not buying because of COVID. So there, if you buy, you can buy, if it's a good property, with a significant discount that can, in a few years, increase again in value. And so you make a way higher, your property value goes up, or if you rent it out, your ROI goes up. But yes, these areas, and that is basically, I call them tier 2 or tier 3. So you need to go beyond everything that's walking distance from the very center, beyond where a lot of the expats like to live. These kind of questions is what we normally address in a workshop, where we sit down, we talk about locations, your budget, the type of property you like, why you want to buy it, your lifestyle, and we look at examples on the screen, different properties, and we discuss pros and cons of such areas. I need a bit more context, but as an investment, certainly yes. To live there, it's more, I think, a personal decision. Is there new I guess that means legislation. Is a new legislation? Legislation changes quite frequently, like the rental legislation, for instance. Now there is new legislation regarding what purchase tax you pay when you buy a property. It's just been implemented or being implemented, not everywhere yet. There's quite some confusion on it, because in the past you said, what is a Barcelona or Catalonia? What is the purchase tax you pay on a property? 10%. So that might change now. There is.
Sorry, Raf, to interrupt. I did a fat finger syndrome there. I fully typed in my question 2 entries below. It wasn't a full sentence. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. The new legislation proposed to take unrented properties away from owners. Good, thanks for clarifying. No, not from individual owners. There are some political plans, proposals. Let's see what happens in the end, to go against the large companies who own multiple properties, but not 5 properties, multiple properties, and tax them if they don't rent out certain properties, or if they just keep them empty by means of speculation. So there is some ideas there, but not for individuals. Okay. Another question: do you also advise sellers, for example, in terms of setting the right price? Yes, we can do that, and actually, we have customers who buy a property, and then at a later stage in their lives, they decide to sell a property because they get a family, they buy a bigger property, or they say, like, quite some people now, they bought in Barcelona, they sell it, and they say we prefer to live in a bigger place. So let's say you sell in Barcelona, you have a 500K budget, and in Barcelona you have a 2 or 3 bedroom apartment at a good location. With that budget, we can have a very nice house outside the center with a garden, with a swimming pool. So yes, we advise people as well on that, because the value there is we know what the buyers are doing. We know what buyers want, what they're worried about, what is important to them, because that's what we do day to day. So it's easy for us to advise on sellers what they should do or not do when selling a property. Okay. Where I am renting now, they have raised the rent beyond the price fixed by the new law. What can we do? If it's so, you should first see if it's really incorrect what they've done. If they have I said this before, it's not just the index, it's also the index plus if your property has certain features. For instance, it has been renovated recently, then you can increase the price a little bit. It's not the case. You should address your landlords, write them a formal letter or burofax, and say that what they've done is incorrect. It's very tricky for landlords if you do this, because they get massive fines if they do this. So you're well protected here. If this is the case, then you're well protected here. You can do this yourself, or I think what is way better is that one of our lawyers takes a look at your current rental contract, takes a look at the new contract, and then they can speak then as professionals, as lawyers, to your landlord or his or her representative. And rental contracts are, for example, what we see a lot related to this. That's why I mentioned this. When people are renting and they buy a property, you need to terminate your rental agreements, and there is termination language in your contracts. A lot of people ask us, what do we need to do? And then the tenant proposes a document, and they say, look, you just signed this. And like yesterday, we looked at it for Tim. And he said, like, well, there's one clause in the clause number 6 which is not good. So the lawyer is looking at it now. Elizabeth, the lawyer, she will be speaking to the landlords. They had a lawyer to get just an agreement before these documents are signed. Does your company manage rental properties? In principle, not. We do this for ourselves as a business, our own properties. In some cases, we decide to do so, but it needs to be specific cases. But in principle, not. We have partner companies that are good at doing that. So when customers buy a property and they say, now I want to rent this out 8 months a year, for instance, I want it 4 months for myself. So we can do that. We get it on the temporary rental market. We can advise you on what is important, how to make it look like, how to furnish it, what people expect as tenants, because we do it ourselves, and then put you in touch with companies that do it for many of our customers. I think I'm through all the questions. Did I miss someone? Please shout if I missed someone. You can open your mic. You can. Do I have everyone? No, I think so. So one more thing. Opportunities for you. If you are serious about buying a property, you see my screen, I think. First, what are your possibilities? Think about that. Be realistic. I'll show you a link here of the website. If you just go there, there's a buyer wish list. Just fill in the buyer wish list. I sent you a link for a Zoom meeting, 30 minutes for free. You get our opinion. You get my opinion. I do the call with you directly myself. Okay, it's my commitment to you. The financial part, get it sorted. Workshopping. Let's sit down. Let's talk about all the options, and then the property search starts. And then it starts. Not earlier. There's an interesting opportunity. March 5th. Barcelona Expat Fair. Metropolitan is co-organizing this. We will be there with a booth. I will be running a workshop as well, a live workshop again after the confinements, about similar topic, mistakes to avoid. It's live. It's in Borne, Station de Francia, and you can meet us there in person. We can have a chat. We can have a coffee. You can explain me your plans. But if you want to come, you need to register on the Barcelona Expat Fair website. But it's also good if you want to book some time that I can dedicate some time to you. Just drop us an email first, please, and say, look, you're going to be there, so that I know you're coming, and then I make sure I take time for you. I think it's going to be very busy. A lot of people registered, and the workshop is at 12 at noon on Saturday, 5th of March. So
if I may, Raf.
Yes, Victor, of course.
You have, I think it is sold out, as a matter of fact. But there's always some people who don't show up. I would recommend that if you are going to hear Raf's, if you want to see Raf present, that they get there, 10 minutes before, because as always, your session's sold out already.
So I think if you just want to be to stay informed and to know a bit more, and maybe hear some messages again, come to the workshop, come to our booth, let's have a talk. But if you have specific plans to buy a property, so you're searching already, or you're talking to banks already, or maybe you've seen a property and say that's the house or the apartment I want to buy, then don't wait for that workshop. Drop me an email at raf@inspireapartments.com, and let's have a Zoom meeting, a first conversation. I need to understand. I will listen a lot in that first conversation. I need to understand your plans. Why do you buy? Where are you in the process? Did you speak to banks? Which banks did you speak to? Did you visit properties already, or where are you? And what are your plans? I can explain you my initial opinion. Do I think it's realistic? Do you think it's workable? And I can explain you as well then how we could, based on what you tell me, how we could support you, how we could make it a successful search, a stress-free search, where you save 90% of your time easily, save lots of money, because you don't overpay for properties, as we said, but also get optimized mortgages and so on, and better views on potential renovation costs. But it's so right property, good price, but also giving you these guarantees, okay, for what the legal work, the lawyers do, what the architects do, and all these things will then be combined into good purchasing contracts. So that is where we can, in a nutshell, help you. But then don't wait if you have specific plans, because good properties sell quickly. You don't need to rush from a market's point of view. The prices will go up, but not tomorrow. I mean, it's a question of a few months, I think, when we will see that the impact of the increase. Demand is up already, but prices always go up with some delay. And because there is stock on the market that needs to be sold first, and then prices go up. So, and they are going up already for penthouses with a terrace, for very specific properties. So that's my offer to you. Feel free to reach out. Do we have a poll still to run? Or the last poll? Is it a separate poll? Let's quickly pull this up here. How inspiring did you find this webinar? How helpful was this for you? How valuable was it to you? You should see a message popping up, I think. Is it on there? Yeah, it's there. Okay, so this is for us just to know, because we put a lot of time in preparing this and try and make it as practical as possible based on experience from people like yourself that are buying. It's good to get some feedback. Shall we? People responding? Okay. Thanks very much. Success with your purchasing plans, with the search, with evaluating properties, with buying them. I hope you know a little bit more now than an hour and a half ago. And happy to see you again, to hear you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks a bunch, Raf. Take care.
Have a good day, everybody. Good evening.